Good evening, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that musical selection. We'll be joined on screen shortly by a few folks, but welcome tonight to our third installment of Harmonic Justice, a conversation about how to create a more inclusive future by centering racial equity in classical music. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Cherise Fanno Burdeen. I'm a volunteer member of the NatPhil Board of Directors and also chair of the Equity Transformation Committee within NatPhil. NatPhil is housed at the Music Center at Strathmore in Montgomery County, Maryland. They are the ancestral lands of the Piscataway people, who were among the first in the Western Hemisphere. Strathmore is on Indigenous land that was stolen from the Piscataway people by European colonists. Sorry, I'm nervous about tonight. It's going to be so great. It's just making me nervous. We pay our respects to the Piscataway elders and ancestors. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and the settlement that brings us here together today. We also want to take a minute to recognize the human suffering and death happening right now in the Ukraine, but also in many countries of the global South. To everyone in all parts of the world struggling for access to human and civil rights, we acknowledge your pain. In our first two installments of Harmonic Justice, we explored general concepts of the centering of whiteness in so-called classical music and elevating the topic of equity and arts education. Tonight, we continue our exploration of the intersection of music and racial justice, focusing on the role music plays as an expression of emotion, a soundtrack to movements, and in bringing us together to make collective sense of the world around us. Tonight's Harmonic Justice is a preface to the upcoming America's Requiem, commemorating the life and tragic murder of George Floyd, with the world premiere of Adolphus Hailstork's A Knee on the Neck, composed around the backbone of the poetry of Dr. Herbert Martin. Both men join us this evening, along with educator Dr. Dianne Cherry and our co-moderator, Montgomery County Alumni Chapter, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Inc.'s Social Action Committee Chair, Pam Luckett. You will meet them momentarily. But we start tonight with two special guests. We welcome Jakari Harris, the Executive Director of the George Floyd Memorial Foundation. His biography and accomplishments to date are extensive and impressive. We are also honored to be joined tonight by Bridget Floyd, George Floyd's sister. Mr. Harris, the floor is yours.
Definitely. Good evening. My name is Jakari Harris, and I just want to say it is such an honor to be here with you all virtually today. I have been excited about this amazing event. And, here at the George Floyd Memorial Foundation, where I have the honor of serving as the executive director, we're being the change that we wish to see, and we're doing that by showing up. So I want to encourage each of you today to show up when everyone else is giving up, because we need your voice, we need your input, we need your authority, we need your power. Whatever you can do to be the change in your community, that is what we want you to do. Very quickly now at the foundation, we have three pillars: it's education, criminal justice reform, and community mobilization. And we know that everyone can take part in our work. So please be sure to visit us at the George Floyd Memorial Foundation.org to learn more. We would love to connect with you more. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. So it's at this time that I would like to invite Pam to join me on screen, and I will turn things over to you to moderate tonight's esteemed panel.
Okay, good evening, everybody. It is my extreme pleasure to be able to moderate this exciting panel tonight on Harmonic Justice. And I want to start by welcoming our panelists, Dr. Hailstork, Dr. Martin, and Dr. Cherry. Tonight, we'll discuss the intersection of the arts, communications, and racial justice. Our focus is going to be on the role they each play in expressing emotion, serving as soundtracks to movements, and conveying messages of struggle and support. Together, they help us make sense of the collective world around us. So we're going to jump right in. And I'm going to start with you, Dr. Cherry. I think now all of our panelists should have their cameras on. I'm going to start with you, Dr. Cherry. And can you give us some examples of the way communications and the arts have intersected over time in this country?
Well, good evening and thank you for having me. Let's consider this. Let's consider that resistance against social injustice likely began as early as 1619. Once common native languages among the captured had been destroyed, the men and women seeking social justice in a foreign land used both nonverbal and verbal communication techniques to articulate support for movement toward legal equity. For example, research shows that certain cornrow styles of hair design actually were maps denoting routes north, and the directional lyrics in so-called Negro spirituals have been well documented. Let's remember that posters of raised fists at an Olympics or viral video of bended knees during a U.S. national anthem at a football game. Media have shown how images, terms, innuendo, and patois can reveal support, condemnation, or indifference to an idea, a concept, or an individual. Whether featured on a bestsellers list, in renowned galleries, or in symphonic venues or not, authors, painters, composers, and other content developers across the very broad spectrum of communication have delivered messages of struggle to audiences throughout our time in this land.
Thank you for that, Dr. Cherry. So now as we're weaving kind of a story here, Dr. Martin, I'm going to speak to you. You are the librettist. Did I say that correctly?
Librettist.
Librettist, okay,
Yeah.
for A Knee on the Neck, which is the kind of the subject of our talk this evening. And please tell us more about yourself and your path to the creation of this particular piece.
There's not much to tell. I think that we may very well just consider the text, which my good friend Dr. Adolphus Hailstork has said, and which we will all enjoy in perhaps 2 weeks' time, or maybe even less than that. But that is the important thing. I think that for many of us, we have been truly silent, watching these deaths occur before us, occur in secret. And I think that with Mr. George Floyd, it was the first time that openly we watched this man pass away on television. And we were horrified at what had happened, both in silence, both in the middle of the night, and right before our eyes when we saw this event taking place. That I think is the important thing. And I think, shall I say, the citizenry is now awakened, and I hope that they never ever fall asleep again.
Thank you for that. Dr. Hailstork, you composed the classical music to the words of Dr. Martin. Tell us about this collaboration process and your journey with it as well around this important story. And I know that there are parts of it where there's humming and singing, and just that as part of the story as we communicate racial injustice in the US.
Well, I think we're all horrified by the incident, and shortly thereafter, Dr. Martin sent me a text, and I asked him if he wanted me to set it, and he said, yes, would you please? And so I started working on it almost 2 years ago, as right at the end of May, right after Mr. Floyd was murdered. And now we've gotten to this point. Fortunately, I had a score that existed that I thought would work very nicely for his words, and which was a tribute to another African-American. In that case, my score was called Hercules, and it's about a slave chef of George Washington. And that's an interesting story in itself. But I just got to work setting Herbert's words, and here we are.
That's exciting. And I'm excited about just people hearing about this, people who may not be familiar with this type of work and how it is so relevant to what we are looking at today in our life. I'd like to ask each of you, Dr. Martin and Dr. Hailstork, how were you drawn to the arts initially, and particularly as a Black man within a white supremacist culture? And I know that they addressed that in previous Harmonic Justice episodes, just talking about that. What's it like to have the type of gift, the type of craft that you each have, and fight inside of that type of structure, just to be able to be yourself, to be able to express yourself in the way that you would want to?
Well, for me, it was really very easy because I found in my high school, there were the choirs and there were the drama teachers. And I ran into one or two teachers of poetry when I was a junior and a senior. So I was encouraged on all of those fronts to participate. And I did so willingly because I wanted to learn what each of those groups had to offer to me. And the rest, I think, is probably as much history as it was encouragement, that these people thought that I had some ability, and so they sort of gave me a shove, because as I remember someone says, we can't do it for you, you have to do it yourself, and we believe in you. And I thought that was really kind of remarkable, and so I did go about doing it for myself. The road, I must say, is difficult, but it's also very interesting, and it has really very, very great high points. And I've been delighted by those as much as I have been troubled by those people who would have kept me back, shall we say.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Dr. Hailstork.
Well, my story is very similar. There were people who were, when I was young, who were encouraging. I took a music aptitude test in the 3rd grade, and I must have done well enough on it that I got introduced to orchestra instruments. And I chose the violin. Actually, I thought I chose the harp. They put a violin in my hand because I think they thought that was a little bit more transportable. And I started playing the violin in the 4th grade and stayed with that till I got out of high school. But shortly thereafter, I also started singing in school choirs, and I also began singing in a cathedral choir, a high church Episcopal cathedral in Albany, New York. And at all times, I was encouraged in my musical pursuits as a singer, as a violin player, as I started taking piano lessons at the cathedral. Then I took organ lessons at the cathedral. And it just went on and on and on, and music evolved as my life. And it was, I like to jokingly tell people that it wasn't until I was many, many years older, 40, in my mid 40s or something, that I realized that some people chose their careers and I never, which means you had an alternative, and I never had an alternative. Music chose me, it was a calling.
Well, we are forever grateful that it did, especially for the gifts that you both bring to us. Dr. Cherry, I'm going to switch over to you and ask you, when we talk about communications, you're very experienced in this arena. How do you feel that the media has elevated social justice issues to create change? And how can the arts replicate this model?
I would say that in recent years, perhaps because of the proliferation of policing abuses among Blacks and others, the family of media, news, editorial, and parody have been critical in presenting images of and interviews with the leaders and participants of these movements that accurately represent the goals of the social movements like Black Lives Matter and, to an extent, Me Too. Some analysts have even called these movements social media movements because of the ubiquitousness of social media tools in getting the word out about these movements. I would suggest that the family of the arts could do many things, including open dates at venues, integrate an educational component into its outreach, encourage, draft, and train younger apprentice artists as much about the interactions of talent as about the interactions of economics in their chosen professions.
Thank you for that. That's very important as we see that we do want to introduce this, continue to introduce this to a broader audience and be able to overcome even the negativity that we can see in communications and social media, but really continue to lift the arts as a way to just express who we are as a people and what we are as a people and what our life experience is. I want to talk to the panel for a moment now. We learned in one of the earlier installments of Harmonic Justice that only about 4.5% of orchestras and about 4.3% of conductors are Black or Latinx. Composers still remain primarily white, and we are fortunate to have one here with us this evening, an African-American composer. Let's talk about the importance of being fierce voices in a racial structure that wants to deny our ability to contribute in this space. Dr. Martin, I'd like to start with you for a comment, if you don't mind.
I should probably defer to Dr. Hailstork, but I can say it's, you know, writing is a solitary event. And for the most part, I have gone on about that with a kind of determined singularity, shall we say. I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be gifted, but I think that those things come from inspiration and from somewhere outside of my own human experience. And then comes the fact that you have to read a lot to understand what it is the poet is using metaphorically or saying metaphorically. All of those things you somehow have to be in touch with. And maybe even a slight teaspoon, shall we say, of envy, because those people who are in the textbooks have already accomplished it, and you are arriving with a kind of jealousy and a kind of envy, hoping that you will be able at least to measure up in some kind of way. But all of those groups, shall we say, that have principally been given over to white people, shall we say, was something that I just wanted to achieve. I thought there ought to be Black conductors, there ought to be Black composers, and certainly Black singers. But and we did have them, but it took a great deal of time, and I would say a great deal of patience for them to come to the fore in the great houses and in the great concert halls of our time.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Hailstork, I can see you are chomping at the bit to answer here.
I thought I was running for the corner. Try to follow Herb's words. and thoughts is a big challenge because he expresses them so beautifully. He said everything I could say, but he said it much better. I wanted to, I did remember asking my mom when I was about 13 or 14, where are the Black composers? Because I was in love with classical music by that time. And and when I was in high school, when I finally got to high school, I made up my mind then that I wanted to be a composer. I had a wonderful high school orchestra teacher. Her name was Gertrude Howarth, and I always say her name in honor of her, who said to me, Hailstork, I hear that you want to write music. Well, if you write it, we will play it. And that was the greatest statement I ever had from an educator. And I started writing. I mean, I had an orchestra piece done for string orchestra when I was a junior in high school. And then I conducted it, and then there was an orchestra piece for the full orchestra in my senior year, and I conducted that. And I started writing. I've got a notebook that goes back to 57. So, and my earliest sketches are right there. And I said, gee, I really like this. I needed an outlet for self-expressivity. I just needed, there's something so beautiful about music. It's so emotional, but at the same time, it requires mental discipline for structuring. There are so many outlets in terms of whether it's for choir or solo piano, or whether it's for violin and chamber groups, or whether it's for string orchestra, whether it's for full orchestra, whether it's for chorus and orchestra. You have all of that as a means. And I've been doing it for more than 60 years, and I love it. And I've never stopped loving it. People ask me, why do you do it? Because I love it. I mean, I think that's all there is to it. And borrowing one of Herb's words, it's a delight. It's a delightful experience to write a piece of music. It'd be nice when they're performed. Now, the whole, people have sometimes talked about, well, what are the complexities of getting performed? And have you been blocked? I haven't been blocked, I've been overlooked, if that's the type of blocking. And only, there was a time I wasn't. And I relate the story that when the Congress was working on the idea of a Martin Luther King holiday, national holiday. Now, I had this premonition that if they're going to do that, then there might be an opportunity for Black composers to be looked at, heard, etc. And already there was at least one wonderful librarian, Dominique Delerma, who was at Indiana State, and he said he's been looking for the music of Black composers, and there were none in the library. And so he made the rest of his career on digging up music of African-American composers and seeing that it got performed, got recorded, et cetera, et cetera. And I just happened to come along at that time. And on the last Columbia Records volume of music of Black composers, I squeezed in as the last piece they selected. Okay, and that started my career. And the piece I wrote was for the bicentennial, and that was because, by chance, the conductor at Tennessee NatPhil Orchestra, Thor Johnson, had found out from his brother-in-law, who was a choir conductor in Detroit, that, hey, there was this Black composer who could write. And so he was given gave me my first symphonic commission to write a piece called Celebration for the Bicentennial. I went to that, and the rest is history. That led to other pieces, et cetera, et cetera. And the career, as I got closer to the Martin Luther King holiday, that grew, and I wrote a piece called Epitaph for a Man Who Dreamed, and that has taken off. and that's yeah, I see that. But after that initial reaction of about 15 years, things got quiet. You know how the things work in this country. It's by fad. It's by fad. So the fad of looking for a Black composer and Black composers was over. And only recently has it become a hot topic again. And unfortunately, there are a whole bunch of young, talented composers coming along, ready to take up the mantle and put on the cape of success and see how long this particular one lasts. We might call it, we're going through a George Floyd era now. And everybody's got a conscience about that. And so the many orchestras in the country have asked themselves, what about our programming? Can we open it up more? And so have many concert conductors and concert artists, et cetera, et cetera. So since I retired, at least, many commissions have poured in, and I'm here talking to illustrious people for the National Philharmonic and Harmonic Justice.
Thank you so very much. You said a few things there that I'm going to put a pin in and come back to, but I want to ask Dr. Cherry the same question, talking about the importance of being a fierce voice in a racial structure that wants to deny our ability to contribute in this space. And I think in communications, not only that, but maybe that wants to reshape our voice or change our voice or minimize our voice. How would you address that? You're on mute, Dr. Cherry. No problem. It's
Sorry about that.
The Zoom demon.
Zoom demon. I'd say that among African Americans, the placement of Freedom's Journal into the pantheon of news media in the 19th century as the first Black-owned newspaper in the US secured a place to, quote, plead our own cause, as co-founder of Black journalism, John Rushburn, said. Therefore, at least since 1827, there have been fierce voices, Black newspapers, radio, television, internet sources such as BET.com and radio TV1.com, maintaining aggressive and productive activism along a myriad of social justice issues, which we might want to consider defining at some point tonight. But I want to just say that from mental health issues to education concerns, and yes, even the advocacy for opportunities and contributions in fields like classical music, where these have been limited, these fierce voices work continually to eliminate the silence preferred by the other.
Great, thank you for that. And I put a pin in what you said there about just defining these social justice issues. I'm gonna jump back over to you, Dr. Hailstork, because in listening to you, you're known as one of classical music's most prolific and performed African-American composers. Yet you shared, a teacher told you, oh, you wanna write, we won't play it. And then you shared about another opportunity. Did I get that wrong?
Yeah, she said, if you write it, we'll play it. We will
play it. Okay.
That was in high school, right? Now, now it's my belief that had that not been up north in Albany, New York, that may never have happened.
Okay.
The opportunity like that for a Black boy in the South probably was really tough.
Yes, yes. Okay, well, good. I don't want to start another war that wasn't there then. But you also even referred to you squeezed in to an opportunity that started your career, yet you are this amazing and renowned individual. So I'm thinking about some of our younger artists today, like Amanda Gorman, Dr. Martin, who is a poet. And I think of a young man, Kendrick Lamar, who has a classical music influence in his work. So how would we carry forward your legacy? And we talked a little bit about that, but how would we carry forward your legacy to the younger generation when we see that there are those who are interested and have exhibited talent, but just to really help them understand the importance of this? I'll let you start, Dr. Hailstork.
Well, I think
Dr. Martin got you, sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Martin.
Leon,
I think you have to have that ambition. And since poets, I think, are somewhere in our attics, all by themselves, and principally remain that way, you have to have somebody out there who has at least an inkling of your talent and your abilities. Thank goodness that Amanda Gordon, I think, can't say her last name now, but had the wife of the president to recommend her to him. And that is how she was initially put forth and finally chosen. And I thought, goodness gracious, I'm never going to have anybody who is anywhere near me and who knows of my abilities. When President Obama was there, I thought I have a chance. And I hope that somebody will say my name to him. That didn't happen. And so again, I am in the waiting line. But be that as it may, what I do while I am waiting is to write. And what I do as a teacher is to suggest that those poets who have the ability and the talent, that they write as well. And I have not restricted my encouragement to color alone. I have had a number of white poets who have managed to get their books published and understand that there is a strain out there. Everybody is in line, and you have to write, and then you have to write convincingly and persuasively. And that goes for all of us. And we hope that there are many people out there now, among them, my contemporaries, Nikki, Giovanni, and Sonia Sanchez, are the rising, if not rising, already established poets of my generation. And they have been around for many, many decades, shall I say, but they are very, very good at what they do. And so one has to think about the fact that I grew up in Alabama, not very much encouragement there. And so my family moved to Ohio, where the teachers were encouraging, but also aware that they could not do it for me. I had to do it for myself. And that was where I was encouraged, guided, sometimes threatened by my relatives, but nevertheless guided on to whatever career I have managed to scrape together and put together for those who are willing to go on the internet and search out my name and find whatever it is that I may contribute to their well-being. So we have to think encouragement, persuasion, encouragement, persuasion all the way through. Lots of people will get in the way, but you can't be discouraged by that. You have to find a route that goes around them, or that goes under them, or that goes over them, and move ahead. Each time I do that, I think, oh, it's not so bad. It's not so terrible. And I've gone ahead, with my life. And luckily for me, somebody was in the wings and saw that I might be a decent colleague to Adolphus Hailstork and engage me. And the rest, suddenly at 11 books of poetry, I find myself now a librettist. And I can't tell you how that happened. accepted that it did, and I was pleased that it did happen. And the only thing that I can think that helps me is that I studied voice and singing. And those people taught me that you had to have singable words. And so when I write a text, I try to put singable words in that text so that no singer is angry with me for putting 20 word syllable into the text. Not gonna do that.
Thank you for that. And that makes us even more excited for the premiere of this work. Dr. Hailstork, tell us your story about that. How do we carry your legacy forward?
Well, first of all, I running out of legacy time here. Well, I've had the good fortune of having a great publisher, Theodore Presser Company, and invited me to send works to them, I guess 30, 35 years ago. And I have done that consistently throughout since that time. And they publish almost everything that I've ever sent them. So people want to study my music, there it is. There are a few other publishers who have also participated and published works, but Presser is the main one. And that's how, and then of course, I'm gonna just keep working. And this, you know, Herb mentioned it in a way, and it also goes for music, and that is, regardless of public reception or an acceptance, he and I both love what we do. There's some emotional satisfaction that turns into an almost a need, a craving to do, which is different from a craving to get accepted or famous or anything else. You have to have that burn. And I've always had it, no matter where I was. Even the years I was in the Army, I rented a piano in the bachelor officers' quarters and had it in my room, and I wrote music. I've always been writing. And once I started in high school, I never stopped, and regardless of the physical situation I was in or the social acceptance. And I'm very happy to now have many works out there. There are 300 pieces, more than 300 pieces. Many of them, at least 100 or more, have been published. So if anybody's looking for works of a Black composer, you know, we all know that our views go on Afro-classical or other sites and on the music of Black composers. I got a listing. I'm very, very happy, you know, to get a listing with Margaret Bonds or Florence Price or T.J. Anderson or William Grant Still or any of the milestone composers. George Walker, my God, the first one to win the Pulitzer Prize. It's good. I've got my little niche. I've made my little contribution, and I am content.
Well, thank you for that. And your niche is not little, and you've made more than a little contribution. So I will have to speak to that particular comment. I want to talk now just a little bit about the work that's coming up in a couple weeks that you collaborated on, A Knee on the Neck. And you know, content can be transformative. And I'd like for you all to address, how have you changed as a result of this particular work? You've had other collaborations, but how have you changed as a result of this particular work? Dr. Martin, you want to start this time? You're on mute, Dr. Martin. There, okay.
How's that?
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm not so sure that I have changed. I remember when Emmett Till was lynched, and I had announced to my mother that I'm going south to visit her sister, and she was appalled. She had given me that talk about how you go downtown and what I must do in order to be safe and not to upset anybody. But she was never really convinced that my having lived in the North for these many decades, that I would not in some way make a mistake, whether that was intentional or not, and that would cause her a great deal of pain. And so I tried as a young kid, an adolescent growing up, and then a teenager, not to do anything that would cause her grief or pain. And that was all uppermost in my mind and always in my brain, rattling around. And so I have lived these many years not having brought her that extra bit of trouble or pain to her door. That's the first thing. And so, and now I'm trying to remember the rest of your question.
Just about changing as a result of this particular work.
Yeah, in many ways, I guess I was already changed. And that what I tried to bring to this particular text was a voice that the audience will identify with and hopefully will take home with them, share with their individual families, and keep that spirit alive so that we do not have to continually repeat over and over and over again the lessons which have been given to us by somebody, by history, or by someone who is in a university or in the grade school and high schools of our time. But all of those things, you cannot be surprised that all of these events in one way or another affect us, and how they affect us, how they manage to get us to treat all of our students with fairness and with justice, meet them halfway. And I think for me, the rest has been history. I've had many good students, both white and black, along the way, and I've tried to treat them all with the same equality and to encourage them all to do the best we can. We don't know as we walk through this life who we are impressing and who we are going to influence and who we are going to inspire. But the best we can do is to be ourselves and be as good as we can, and then hope that some of those seeds fall along the way and are picked up by our students and by others who are not our students.
Thank you. Dr. Hailstork.
What is the specific question right now?
The specific, the specific question is this particular work, A Knee on the Neck. How have you changed as a result of this?
Well, well, one thing there's so many different approaches. First of all, I've never taken a previously existing work and that was strictly a symphonic work and turned it into a work for symphony and chorus. And it was a big challenge, but it was a necessary challenge because if I had not done that, I'd still be writing it. Herb's text is not a piece of cake. It's not an easy toss-off song. Actually, for me, I don't know if Herbert would agree with this at all because it's his words, but it's the most fierce piece of writing I've ever seen from him. And I think because lately he and I have been involved in some fierce projects. We had to do the Tulsa and 1921, and he had to talk about watching this village burn down and the death of this woman's mother, and then a year or two later, the George Floyd thing happens, and more fierceness of purpose in his writing just came out. I mean, I tell people, or I don't know if I'm remembering this correctly, I said within a week I had this text. A week of the murder, I had this text from Dr. Herbert Martin, and it just in my email, and I said, "Herb, what is this? You want me to send it or something?" And he said, "Yes, would you please?" And I said, "Oh, I've just been sentenced to hard labor here." And so I said, "What am I going to do?" I was working on many other projects at the time, and I said, I've got to solve this. Now, I had the text, the score to Hercules already written and performed. And I said, it's a very intense piece about a slave escaping from his bondage, even though he was the chief chef of the colonies and George Washington's personal chef. And I said, I think I'll use that music. I don't think it's going to have much of a chance of being performed as an isolated symphonic work. Let me see if it will work with Herb's text. And it did. Let's hope anyway. We'll find out in about 10 days. I managed to, there's a certain fierceness in his language, and there's a certain fierceness in my score, and they did meld. And I like that. I don't know how it changed me, but it allowed me to use my craft. And because you had mentioned earlier about craft, and if neither one of us had a craft, a good craft, I couldn't have gotten that text, and this piece could not have existed. But if I were to say, the thing I always tell young people is learn your craft. Now, which is in classical music anyway, it's a lifelong endeavor. You keep studying, you keep mastering this, you keep mastering that, you keep manipulating tensions, learning how to do that, how to find the tension points in Herb's text. I had to go through his text, of course, analyze it, see how he split it up. He split it into different, I don't know, mini chapters, you might say, and that was a good guideline. And then he included the piece called the folk song in there, and a gambling song. Well, that one baffled me the most, Herb. I wasn't quite sure what to do with it. But he also had this wonderful double entendre about the virus going around, which I thought was just pure genius, because the virus in this country is not Omicron or whatever they call it. It is murder. It is hatred. And that is what he put in there. And it's death. And he's got dialogues. Have you ever seen a knee on a neck? Have you ever seen that? And that stops the breath. And that's what led to, when we had an earlier discussion, I remember I was talking about the words "I can't breathe" are in my text, in my piece, because although that refers to another death, it certainly fits the subject. the subject of this piece by Herb transcends George Floyd's deaths as an individual, because we have, I don't know about you folks, but I've been watching for the past 10 years, Black men getting killed, Black women getting killed. And I said, what is going on? I kept thinking there's a secret protocol among police. Have you gotten your Black in your career yet? You know, have you killed your Black? Because it's like 7 bullets in the back, 16 bullets in one corpse. What is going on? If you step out your door because of the color of your skin, you could be assassinated. And this is a trauma that needs to be addressed, or at least vented. And what Herb did is give us the occasion to vent. But at the same time, because of his humanity, he also gave us an opportunity to consider some reconciling gesture of outreach to each other and among each other, so that perhaps the killing can stop and we could abide in peace. And we certainly need to overcome what this virus that he wrote about. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hailstork. Dr. Martin, you look like you want to add something there before we move on.
I think what I tried to do in watching that television episode of George Floyd dying was to go back and remember what my mother and my father had said to me, and then to consider that perhaps that text was memorized by every mother and father in this country who was Black and had the opportunity to say those words to their sons and to their daughters, and to tell them to beware and to do this. I give you this commandment. These are more commandments, and I want you to follow them because they will save your life until I can get there and plead for you. So it's in some ways a kind of requiem, a kind of song that parents sing to their children, recite to their children, and implore them to pay attention in an age when our kids have somehow forgotten what attention may mean and what paying attention may mean and what it requires of each of us along the way. And in some ways, our requiem is again given to the whole community of citizens of this country. And again, it is asking them to pay attention to this because we need this in order to reconcile and to come together as human beings.
Thank you. You know, I heard so much in the dialogue that you both just shared, starting from stories as a young boy, Dr. Martin, that you related, and Dr. Hailstork, you kind of addressed the story that your parents would tell you to be careful what you do, be careful when you go out, and how now we've evolved to a place where, or as we've evolved, the story is the same, but it's much faster, it's much quicker, it's harsher. And it has evolved into, as Dr. Hailstork talked about, this beast that we live in the midst of, that really we see the, as you said, the hatred and the racism and the death. And we see then the story here of George Floyd and how you bring it forward. We'll be bringing it forward to us to really hear it, embrace it in a way that hopefully drives us to peace, or drive those to peace who are not peacemakers. But I want to ask Dr. Cherry, because so much of this also is in communications, how we communicate with our families, with our children. You are a professor of communications, but you're also a mother of a son and have probably had the talk with him that Dr. Martin's mom had with him. And so how do you, in speaking to your students, how do you weave that into communications and social media and things today? And how can you see art, as we're talking about, as in this space to share social justice or to teach social justice as we move into a post-COVID society? I know that's a lot, but I know you're smart enough to dissect it.
Well, let me start with the question about the talk that I certainly have had with my son decades ago, because he's a little older now and probably has had that conversation with his daughter. But in class, it is easy to approach because we have a whole unit on culture. And gratefully, I'm able to operationalize the word culture any way I'd like to. And so what I try and do is bring in from our Thai students something from the Thai culture in Thailand and here in America, because they're different and they're the same. I try to bring in some of our Latino students from Guatemala or from San Salvador. And then there are my Black students who are from Maryland, who've lived in Maryland their whole lives, who've had that talk, who've been downtown Silver Spring and been followed in the store, who have all these other experiences that unfortunately are cultural. And I think that one benefit, if we can look at it as a benefit of the COVID pandemic, is that it showed us a lot. It showed us our vulnerabilities, and we thought we had everything worked out and so and so, and we really never did. For example, COVID started, let us say that some people believe that COVID started as sort of an invasive germ from some other country to infect all of us, and we were all going to die. Okay, so there came the suggestions that drinking bleach would solve your problem, that all you have to do is take this horse pill and it'll save your life. Well, no, there's a lot of misinformation, and that's one of the vulnerabilities that we found during the COVID pandemic, that there's a lot of outlets out there, and we have to be careful and consider some criteria before we decide which media we're going to attend, which we see as credible, which we see as believable. Another sort of recurring vulnerability we saw was that, as is the case with most other health concerns, Black people suffered most. Black people died more often after being infected. More Black people were infected per capita in terms of population. And so that's something else we learned, because we thought we had eliminated healthcare disparities. And no, we really haven't. And so post-COVID, I think we're going to rethink a lot of our institutions. Certainly education has been retooled, because students from primary to college have been at home for almost 2 years. So we are seeing some transformation. Content can be transformative, so can a pandemic.
Thank you for that. And then art, how do you see that as a communications medium in social justice as we move forward?
Well, as I said before, I think that communication tools, both verbal Right on, power to the people, say her name, verbal and nonverbal, raise fists, knees on the football field, etc. Art can always be expressive and show us how to get beyond the challenges of racial injustice, which is, I think, what we're really talking about.
Great. I have a couple more questions before we move to, I think we have some audience questions. I want to ask you, both Dr. Martin and Dr. Hailstork, how do you define success for this particular piece, A Knee on the Neck? And what do you want, what decisions do you want the audience to make after seeing it?
I want the audience to come into the concert hall, listen to the words, listen to the music, and to be moved, not for this particular performance, but for every performance after this. And to be able, in some ways, like we have memorized many of the spirituals, that we have memorized many of the gospel songs, that we are able to recite them to our relatives and to our friends and to interested individuals, so that they get something of what we saw and that they are impacted by that and want always to hear the great requiems, to hear the great cantatas, to hear the great oratorios, but somehow or other I listen to a piece of music and I think, oh, there's a little blues snippet there. Oh, I heard this. There's a little spiritual. There's a little hymn in that. And all of that music tells me that some composer somewhere was inspired to set that so that I would hear it and recognize it and know that we both have tread the same roads. And that's an important thing, to carry away that experience that you get in the concert hall and share it with everybody along the way that you meet, and hope that they will in turn share it with somebody else so that we get ourselves over this terrible feeling of dislike for reasons of the color of one's skin.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Dr. Hailstork.
I like Herb's word of impacted. I would like their hearts to be lifted and their minds moved to be in a way that leads them to be determined to make things better. I really want that's what I like, that that if all these people, 100 or more in the orchestra, 200 or more on the stage singing, 3 soloists can sing a piece, or present a piece that has moments of fierceness, tenderness, the statement of things to think about, a son talking to his mother through the mail, a mother telling the son to come home, the replay of George Floyd's constant stating the word mama, and then finally we can abide together. I would like a journey a journey that traverses so many different moods and thoughts that they're moved when they leave or they go to intermission break. And you know, if we can do this, why can't we get along better? It's that kind of thing. That's what I would like to have happen.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that, both of you. This has been amazing to me also as a mother of, I have 3 children, 3 adult children, 2 sons and a daughter, and the whole experience and just the remembering and, you know, the things that we have to remember as African Americans with our children and even ourselves in the space we live in, that others don't necessarily have to do, and that you can take this and communicate it in this way. I hope many, many, many people will have an opportunity and take the opportunity to see it. And thank you so much. And Dr. Cherry, just the whole tying in communications, where we are today, how we look at art today, but how it transcends time just as a result of that. Cherise is going to come back now. She's got a couple questions that she's going to bring in our closing as well. So Cherise, I'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you so much. This has been amazing. I have just a couple of questions from the audience that I wanted to share and get your reactions to. So one is delightfully asking about the combination of the beautiful words of a poet combined with the elegant power of classical music seems to be both old and new at the same time. Is it reasonable to expect, or would you actually encourage, other Black composers and poets to collaborate in creating messages that approach to keep Black society aware and sensitive to the horrors that routinely find its way to the doorsteps?
I think there's no reason not to encourage it. And to really be honest, I want people always to pick up and open a book of mine and say, why did you say this? And I can probably tell you a decent answer that you can carry with you. I always pose that problem with many of the poets that I met. Why did you put it this way? And most of my teachers would say, you have to do something very subtle, not club the people over the head with the baseball bat. They only go away with the pain that caused them. But if you have moved their heart and caused the blood to move faster and slower and faster and slower, and made them think about that, you've given them something that is lifelong.
Thank you for that. Dr. Hailstork?
Well, I think I said just about everything I had to say on that last answer. For people, young kids coming up who want to go into composition, first of all, the thing we have to say and have to admit is that a music composition standing is not based on topic. It's got to be based on the power of the music, the authority of the music. If the music is a flop, then the great script written by the great librettist may fall by the wayside and you start looking for another composer. I think of the opera world as filled with many carcasses of operas that no one ever hears anymore because either the libretto is ridiculous or the music is a failure. I think you got the Martin and Hailstork team at the right time. Mm. We are both confident of and experienced with our skill, and with our meaning, putting meaning into our languages. And young people, I always tell young people, learn your craft. Learn your craft. Don't think it's sitting in a garage and plugging away at a 40-note keyboard and thinking that, okay, now I'm a composer. No, you might be a songwriter, and that will give you a hell of a lot more money than being a classical composer. But what we're trying to do is raise a high standard, present a high standard, impactful, ritualistic piece. I mean, this gets back to the origin of early music, and that is to speak as a ritual for the congregation that can only who they can mumble some prayers, but this goes beyond that. This is we're standing near the priesthood with this piece. We know that the word requiem usually refers to some religious ritual, and this is it's secular, but it's meant in the language and in the music to lift the spirits and to speak for the people who have mourned and are mourning the disastrous interactions that are taking place. I mean, part of this for me is Charlottesville. I mean, I was working on a piece, a text of Rita Dove's when the Charlottesville thing happened. And so this transcends the death of one person. This is approaching, or trying to approach, the dilemma of the American culture. Now, this kind of thing doesn't last forever. You know, I remember when John Adams came out with Nixon in China. It was called, headline opera. Okay. So is this a headline requiem? And since I've been around long enough to see, as I said before, fads. Okay, right now, are we having the George Floyd fad? And eventually, we've been mourning over something else or something like that. We should also be mourning over that. I forgot the name of the school in Florida where those kids got shot, and how the ones who survived hit the warpath, and still are. And then there's the children in Connecticut and all of that. If we pay any attention to the news, it's hard to stay happy these days. Over the past few years, it's just been slaughter of an individual, slaughter of groups, slaughter, synagogues, schools, churches. I got a movement in my fourth symphony called Remembering the Emmanuel 9. It's I don't know, maybe this has always been going on, but we've never had such a huge amount of news lambasting us with it. So at least we as artists are now in a way, as I said, approaching the clergy and trying to be a healing factor. That's what I think.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. I think the answer to this gentleman's question is yes, we should want to see additional collaborations between composers and poets. And in fact, all of the arts. There are many mediums in which pain, but also community gets expressed. So thank you for that answer. I promise you only one more, okay? Just one more. So as you know, harmonic justice for us is about a focus on not just these issues, but the very function that classical music serves in these United States. And as NatPhil, taking a deep look into ourselves as an organization and in the programming. And so our last question really is, what what do each of you hope to see NatPhil do as an organization? Not just about your piece, certainly hosting your piece is one part, but in the work of a nationally focused orchestra looking to transform itself and leverage its privilege in the field. What is your charge to NatPhil? Dr. Cherry, I'll start with you because I'll give those gentlemen a moment's break. But I ask you the same question in terms of the way we communicate about our work, where we communicate about our work, and who our targets sort of communication is for.
Well, those are the 3 areas I was just about to talk about. Thank you so much for introducing them. First, the nature of the work and the location of the work and the audience for the work, I think has to be contemporary and meaningful and available for young people, because I think young people sort of are the future, if you will excuse the pun. So certainly, as I said earlier in one of my answers, additional venues supporting other collaborations. Maybe not every collaboration needs to be with a group of college-educated women. Perhaps a collaboration could be with a church or a group of churches or other kinds of outlets where the people are, if you will. So those are my ideas.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you.
Also, buy some ad space and some targeted media.
Will do. Got it. Dr. Martin.
I was going to let Adolphus go first.
What can NatPhil do? NatPhil seems to be doing a lot. One of the real great benefits of being involved in this project has been meeting Peter, the maestro, and working with him. And I'll jokingly, not jokingly, tell people forever that I wrote it, but he rescued it, because we have it's taken his skill, his meticulous attention to detail that has helped get this into a polished, a more polished shape for possible future performances. Nobody knows the piece better than Peter does. Nobody. Including the composer. So we're very fortunate, and he's to be supported in every single way.
Did Peter pay you to say those things this evening?
I expect my check tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Great.
Poets are poor, so they don't have any money to send anyone. We have to remember that. But I would second this motion, but also to tell us that what we really try to do is to touch the heart of human beings, and we hope that they respond in the same way that we respond to words and music on the page, and give those things as gifts to each other. That is, we share this experience, however painful it may have been. There is some joy to be taken away from this when we wake up in the morning.
All right, lovely. Well, thank you all so much. I just have a few closing comments for folks as we come to this close. I want to remind you that tickets are still available for the March 26th and March 28th performance of Knee on the Neck. And as I promised, we are announcing tonight, and hopefully we're going to be able to throw the link in the chat. We are having a town hall discussion on April 20th at 7 p.m. So as opposed to this webinar format, that will be a community town hall event on Zoom, where we can come together after seeing the performance and share conversation about the impact of this piece. I know this was a preface to that, so we're talking about something that hasn't happened yet, but afterwards, we'll be able to share with each other about the impact. So thank you, Katie. She threw the the registration link in the chat. So I will give everyone a moment to click on that and make sure that you can register. I want to thank the George Floyd Memorial Foundation for joining us this evening. And then on behalf certainly of Montgomery County Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta, thank you so much for your partnership. And on behalf of the NatPhil family, I offer my deepest thanks to all of you, both on the panel and in the audience, who took the time and emotional labor to be here this evening and talk about these issues. We hope to have a continuation of this Harmonic Justice 3, as we call it. This is our third installment. And for folks who are not able to travel to Washington, D.C. to see this event in a few weeks, I didn't ask permission to tell you this, but it will be taped. And there is hope for a forthcoming performance debut on television later this summer. And we have some big plans for the taped version of this performance after that as well. So to your issue of access, Dr. Cherry, we are hoping that we can provide this well beyond folks who are able to travel, either to Strathmore or to the Capital One Hall. So please join us in March if you're able. Please know that we hope to be able to bring this to you later this year if you are unable. Ladies, thank you incredibly. Gentlemen, it was an honor. And I appreciate that you wore matching outfits this evening with your caramel colored jackets. I'm not sure if you arranged that ahead of time.
I'm colorblind.
Anyway, have a wonderful evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And we'll see you again shortly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you very
Good
much.
night.